Hi, everybody. This is Jay Grunke, founder of the Balanced Runner System. I've been helping runners from beginner to Olympian improve their form and performance since 2003. And here we are with day 3 of the Stuck at Home Running Tips series, from my living room to yours, helping you become a better runner in this time of suspension of normal activities. So just before I go into today's material, which is going to build on what we've been talking about forward lean, I just wanted to share with you something that I heard last night. So Steve Magnus and Brad Stulberg from The Growth Equation, they've written several really great books together on performance, host a monthly online discussion group. And there we met last night. And obviously it was all about, what we as people, and then also specifically we as athletes are going through in this time right now. And one of the points that Steve made was that, one way to handle this time in which maybe a race that you were training for has been canceled, other plans that you have are up in the air or suspended, and you're dealing with a lot of disappointment and frustration. What you do have is probably what got you started running to begin with, which is the opportunity to go back to the reason I'm going out the door for a run today is because I enjoy running. In fact, I love to run. And that's maybe the sole reason that you've got for going out the door right now, because maybe what you were training for is not happening. So that actually in its own way is a real gift. And bearing it in mind may help a little bit. So I want to talk about, first I want to do a clarification of something that I said yesterday, because I got a great question from Stefano in the comments after the lesson about feeling a stretch. And so what I talked about in yesterday's video, if you didn't catch it, was that one way to tell if your calves are going to restrict your ability to lean forward when you run is if you, here, let me show you. If you, again, using my best prop ever, if you lean forward like this, and at this point you feel a stretch in your calves and you can't keep your heels on the floor, because you should have this range of motion without a stretch in order to lean forward. So I wasn't clear on the range of motion, and Stefano said, but I do that, I do feel a stretch and my heels do come up. And the fact is, at a certain point in that movement, if you go far enough, you should feel a stretch. That's normal, like here I am definitely feeling a stretch, but I'm rarely going to need this range of motion for running. I guess if I'm running up a very, very steep hill, maybe, but then I'm not going to be putting my heels down at that anyway. So all you need is enough range of motion. And after a certain point, it is normal to feel a stretch. So what's enough range of motion? Jay DeCarey has, I think his measure for that is actually something that you do seated with bent knees, where you want to make sure that you haven't, oh, you can't see my feet. That you can get your knees past your toes in a sitting position with your heels on the ground. So that's another way to evaluate this, but it doesn't really address, see, digression, wedge cushion on the chair, very important for healthy sitting. Yeah, so anyway, it is normal at a certain point to feel a stretch, but you do want to be able, even in this position, though it's a little harder to eyeball, ideally your knees should get past your toes. And then without you feeling a stretch or like your heels have to come off the ground. Then when you've got that, then it's not going to be your calves that are causing a problem for your forward lean. And again, the calf warm-up video that I posted in the description of yesterday's video is going to really help you warm your calves up and build that range of motion. If you do it every day, a year from now, you're going to have massively more range of motion even when you don't stretch, which is what we really want to get to here, right? A good warm-up is a very valuable thing, but getting to your point, getting yourself to a point where that range of motion is just yours, it's just always there without needing a special warm-up, should be the goal. So anyway, but today I want to talk about the role your glutes play in your ability to lean forward, because if they're not doing their job, then you're not going to be able to lean forward. Your nervous system is not going to let you, because you're going to be afraid of face planting. So this means that we need to look at what the glutes actually do when you run, which is not what people think. So the main job of the glutes, as I've written many times in my blog as well, is not to push off the ground, but it's actually to keep you from face planting, to support your head. Your glutes do the most work in your gait cycle in mid stance, because right now what's keeping me from just falling like this is that my glutes are contracted, and just being in this position, you can feel some work here. And if you don't know how to organize yourself to get into that position, you don't know how to use your glutes in that way, then you just won't go there when you run. So so again, like, how do you know you're having that problem? I gave you a way yesterday one way to check from the inside, from what you feel you're doing, whether you lean forward when you run, and that is to check whether you naturally sway forward in order to start running. Another indicator that you're not leaning forward when you run, and that your glutes are part of the problem, or maybe the main problem, would be if it's predominantly your quads that get sore when you run, or it's definitely you have weak glutes. Somebody's told you have weak glutes. They don't look very strong. They don't feel very strong. They don't act very strong when you strength train. Then you're not using them properly in this way to support you in a forward lean in mid stance. And if you want to do, normally when that diagnosis is made, say in a physical therapy setting, if it's exercises, unfortunately those exercises often don't reproduce the kind of action that glutes need to do when you run. So they would be things like bridges or clamshells, other movements that contract both sides at once, which never happens when you run. It's always in alternation. One is contracting while one is really lengthening. One is shortening while one is lengthening. Anyway, and the action is focused on either holding the pelvis still or pushing the pelvis forward. But again, look at this action. So your glutes are supporting you here. Are they pushing my pelvis forward? No, quite the contrary. If I squeeze my butt in this position, what happens to my lean? It's gone. I'm upright. So we're not talking about squeezing your butt. Squeezing your butt is a very damaging choice to make when you're running. It doesn't fix any problems. It will activate your glutes more, but in a way that is totally interferes with your form rather than improving it. Because it will always have this effect of pushing your pelvis forward. And that's always going to interfere with your lean, and it'll also interfere with the way your hip extension works for pushing off. So, but that's a topic for another time, because we're not talking about lean, we're talking about that. So if you want to do strength training to help your glutes work better in this particular way, you're going to want to reproduce the kind of demand that's actually placed on them in running, which is controlling this movement. So what is that? That's a standing deadlift on one leg, right? And if you want to be really precise about making it match running, you would do it on a bent knee. This is a lot harder to do while looking sideways, but I can manage it. Leroy is impressed. Yes, indeed. So that would be, I think that's going to be your go-to exercise for strengthening that particular action of your glutes. You can do it straight. You can do it on the bent leg like I showed you. There are lots of yoga postures that'll get you there, like even just balancing in this position, your warrior three, all that stuff. And when you're doing single leg squats, if that's an exercise you do as well, and that would also be relevant here. Again, you want to make sure that you're doing it in a forward lean. Ooh, it's like going back to dance class. Rather than upright, okay? Which once you go down, it depends on how far you're going down, but anyway, the shoulders have to go forward. Okay, so that's looking at strengthening exercises that would help with this. But really, if you have to strengthen your glutes, then the problem is not that they were too weak for this activity, for running. The problem is you started off not knowing how to use your glutes this way when you ran, and therefore they didn't get as strong as the other muscles that you use for running. So this is an incredibly important concept to understand about running form, is that movement comes before strength and produces strength. What you know about how to coordinate yourself determines how you move and which muscles will get strong. And it doesn't work the opposite way. So if you have weak glutes and you strengthen them, especially if you're not doing running specific strengthening exercises, but really even just strengthening them does not necessarily change the fact that you don't know how to use them when you run, and that you'll get to a point where you are using them when you run. The more running specific the exercise, the better the odds, but it's a really weak way to learn. And so that's why I use the Feldenkrais method of movement education when I work with runners, because it helps you address things in the right order. What you know about how to coordinate yourself affects how you run, determines what muscles get strong, gives you great form without overworking in any way. And so what I'm going to do, I have some Feldenkrais lessons that are really my go-tos for helping runners learn how to use their glutes this way. And so I'll put a link to those in the description after this live stream is over. So if you're watching live, come back to get those. Otherwise, if you're watching the replay, go right there and go for it. So that's what I've got for you for today. Tomorrow, I want to talk about the head and neck connection in your ability to lean forward. Also really important. So yesterday, plus a bit today, I talked about the calves. We've just talked about the glutes, the head and the neck. These are the three main places where your ability to lean forward when you run is made or broken. And so definitely make sure to come here tomorrow. Same time, same place, 11 a.m. Pacific, every day until this time has passed and we're all back to our normal running and our normal lives. So thank you very much for coming to watch. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss a video, and definitely go to balancedrunner.com and check out all of the resources that I have for you there. And I'll see you tomorrow.